to do. Oh, all right, we are live. We are back with another one. Common Ground with SMK Medical. Today we got an exciting episode for you. As you know, my name is Demetrius. I'm a licensed nursing home administrator and a registered nurse. I am a long-term care consultant. And today I have the fabulous Kirsten. She is here to shed some light. Not only is she a registered nurse, my girl has JD behind her name. Okay, now she was a little humble. She ain't put the initials. I'm gonna change that while she talk, but she got JD behind her name. I ain't gonna butcher it. I'm gonna let her tell us a little bit about you. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, Demetrius, I appreciate you bringing me in on the fold with regards to doing this podcast. I've been in long-term care for 30 years. My background is a registered nurse. I've been a director of nursing. I've been a supervisor, risk manager in long-term care, quality assurance consultant, and I'm most recent as a compliance officer. So I've been in long-term care and seen quite a bit, but as soon as you think you've seen it all, something else comes up.
Listen, I mean, you speaking the truth, and you say something else coming up, and that's what sparked us, got us connected to really talk about it. So you live in Ohio. I'm sure it's cold there. You look like you bundled up a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
You live in Ohio, and Ohio's going through some tough weather right now, as they usually do in January. And recently, there
Right.
was a facility that remained nameless where a resident was found outside. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
they didn't clarify. It said the patio. Now it could be an
Okay,
indoor or outdoor patio, but
you're correct.
yeah, it could go either way. But the assumption is it was an outdoor patio, and we're in the 20-degree range with regards to our weather, and it's snowy. So either way, it didn't probably sound too good. Just hearing it. So
How does that happen? Like, we don't have a 2567, and for the people who are watching or will watch this, a 2567 or a plan of correction is a report that the state prepares based on their findings. Doesn't mean it's 100% accurate. It's their view of the findings. So we don't have that.
right,
So we're just going off of media reports and things. But I mean,
right.
what are your thoughts, like from a compliance perspective?
Oh, from a compliance perspective, it's a matter of looking to see where all the policies and procedures in place that should have been, and did the facility and the staff follow those procedures?
Mm-hmm.
It starts as early as when they first hire, the staff. There's a nurse
Yeah,
involved in regards to circumstance. She was interviewed, I guess, gave her rendition of what happened to the police that were on scene. And, some of the things that were said, it kind of lends to there may have been some errors that took place during this
yeah,
total episode, but that's yet to be determined. An investigation will be initiated from the
yeah.
facility standpoint as well as the Department of Health to find out what
I,
really transpired.
and I can only imagine when you talk about the policies and procedures, there's no secret. I talk about it everywhere I go. I received an IJ when I was a brand new baby administrator, 3 months on the job, and I got
Oh,
an IJ for an elopement
oh no, oh
in
no,
February.
oh
It was
no.
snowing slush on the ground.
Yeah,
It was bad. Like it was, and it's public knowledge. Any 2567 is
right,
available online, public knowledge. So when I'm talking
right.
about, it can always be verified. But I can only imagine. I remember getting that call at 4 o'clock in the morning from my RDO, and she
Mhm.
said, "I don't know what you're doing, sir, but you need to get out of bed."
Yeah, yeah,
I say,
right. All
"What
hands on deck. All hands on deck in these
the
situations.
heck?" And
Yeah,
I get there and I'm learning about the events that transpired. We did not have cameras in the facility, but I'm learning about it by way of investigation. And I'm a registered nurse just like yourself. So as I'm
right,
listening to them say what they have done, I'm getting redder and redder. About as red as this shirt was, my face was, because we
right.
did not follow any basic protocols. And I just been here
Yeah.
3 months, so I couldn't do it all in 3 months. But I had
Hmm.
known and know enough as a registered nurse and as an administrator that when a resident is missing, you should search outside.
Yeah.
We failed to do that, at least in my case. I don't know if this is the case,
Right.
but You talked about policies and procedure. You're chief compliance officer. What policy and procedure should they have?
Well, I can't speak for that specific facility,
Yeah.
but as a general matter of practice, you have policy and procedure with regards to when there's a patient missing.
Yep.
And that should be initiated, as soon as you check the general areas in which the most common areas in which you would have found the patient, they're not there. This particular nurse checked the sign out sheet to see if family took this resident out, and she did not indicate that there was anyone that signed the patient out. However, there was no other steps identified based on the article as it was reported. There
Yeah.
may have been some additional steps that are not, that we're not aware of, but subsequently there should have been an expansion of the search of that resident from internally to bringing in other staff to help you look for the resident,
Oh yeah.
expand your search as far and wide inside the facility. And if you still don't find the resident, you start looking outside, and time is of the essence. You can't wait hours at a time, because some patients
You
you can't give them 5 minutes. They can do they need one-on-one
listen.
observation. So it depends on the circumstance of that patient, what they're able to do. Some patients are able to go on the patio
Yeah.
and handle it dressed appropriately.
Yeah.
That may have been a situation here, so it may not have been as
And
alarming as you would have thought.
you're 100% right, because as you mentioned, the patient could have been ANO times 3, ANO times 4. We don't know, and this is why we're just having a general conversation. The
Mm-hmm.
name of the game is to help with the people that are watching this to feel empowered to go back to their facilities, ask the right questions. Do we have an elopement policy? But yet, when have we done a drill? Right? Because you
Right.
can have a
Exactly.
policy
Right.
and it's
Right.
just holding up. It's just holding up the desk. But you got to
Right.
practice that drill. And for me, I did fire drills as we should quarterly,
Mm-hmm.
right, once a month.
Right.
And I
Right.
also turned around and did an elopement drill.
Right.
There was a time I did a fire drill and elopement drill at the same time. They didn't know which way to act.
Right, right. And they're required. They're required to do it and show the documentation as to how did the staff respond? What was the response time? We've actually had
And,
patients we've taken out of their room and taken them outside and
yep.
see how long it took the staff to find them.
And to me, that's what's important when you talk about a audit. It's being true to the audit. It's being true to the practice, right? You really catch the staff off guard. If the staff know it's coming,
Mm-hmm.
is it really
Right,
practice? So
right.
let them show that somebody's missing. Or I've walked down the hall and say, hey, where's Joe? I'm trying to help with this grievance. Where's Joe Smith at? And then they go look, and I'm like, okay, so what do we do? What do we do? I can only speak from my experience, and in my experience alone, when I received my IJ, um, it was in the middle of the night. The patient obviously left out of a back door. There was a series of unfortunate events that happened. But what I learned as an administrator is anytime I go into a facility, first thing I'm checking is abuse policies. But then I'm also going to turn around and check the elopements and see when the last time, and then make sure that every new staff coming in is trained on elopements. I also implemented elopement books at all of my exits, and then gave it and assigned it to a person to make sure that that person who was assigned to it would check that book every week and update it based on when residents admit.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is if you just set the book up
Right.
and forget about it, what are you really doing?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
I
And then that
I
helps because I think this. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
It would have helped. That definitely would have helped with this circumstance. It sounded like the nurse was new
Hmm.
and wasn't familiar with what to do after she checked the sign out sheet, and she just kind of kept it to herself, to sound like, from what I've read and what I've heard on the
Hmm.
news. But if you'd done the drills, they would have been aware of it, knowing the policies when you first brought them on board before they even start working the floor.
Hmm.
Knowing where the policy and procedures are. If you don't know, okay, go to the policy and procedure. You'll see one that actually says missing resident, what to do,
Yeah.
or ask someone, or call a supervisor
Yep.
and ask the supervisor. Because at this point,
And
you're calling supervisors, DONs, everyone's out there now because you're looking for this patient.
yeah. And from an administrative standpoint, I want to speak from that standpoint. Once again, we never want to get this call, and I know that 99.9% of administrators, are doing what they can to prevent this. But I have to think about, the time of the day. I think this is why it's important to make sure you have enough staff as best as you can. You can't
Mm-hmm.
control call offs, right? You can do your
Right.
best to fully staff, but make sure we have the right staff in the right place at the right time, and we have
Mm-hmm.
the right methods to care for the residents that we accept. I have worked in buildings where sometimes it's been you gotta accept everything, and as administrator, I felt powerless because if I knew if I stood up and said I know I can't accept this resident, then they're coming down on me. So it's kind of that six in one hand, half dozen in the other. That's definitely far and few in between. I've learned to stand up for myself, but I remember those days where you're kind of accepting a resident, and it's like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you got to stick a one-on-one on this resident. And because you got to stick a one-on-one on this resident, what did you do? You pulled another staff member off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Now that staff member's not serving those residents. I mean, it can be a vicious
Right.
cycle.
Right.
So,
Right. And from a compliance standpoint, I would come into the facility or, educate the leadership on, making sure those policies and procedures are in place. Are you doing the drills? Have you done the education? When's the last time you've done an actual drill and pulled a patient off the unit and seen how fast staff will find them? I
yeah,
mean, it gets that serious, and those should be done at least, monthly on different
you know, I,
shifts. And that's the other thing, on
I,
all 3 shifts. That is the point.
you,
Yeah.
I mean, because here's the deal: midnight's always left out. They deserve
Yeah.
more than just the cold pizza. They deserve the drills as well.
Right. Right.
Shout out to
Yeah.
my midnight folks. But so let's talk about let's talk about a Broadham system failure here. From and just in general, we can use my IJ, not anybody else,
Mhm.
right? A
Right.
system failure. So how do we do an investigation to determine where we
Mhm.
messed up at? What does that look like? What's an appropriate investigation?
Well, a comprehensive investigation would definitely entail doing interviews of all the staff
Hmm.
involved, looking at the clinical record to see what type of patient we were dealing with. Had the patient been evaluated when they were first brought on board to see what their cognitive status is or physical
Yep.
mobility is, and find out, did we identify that they were an elopement risk? I mean, the patient was
Mm.
still on the premises, but did we provide the right level of supervision that was needed to have prevented this adverse event? So she didn't per se
You
elope.
know,
She was there, but
and
did we
but
provide
you know what?
supervision?
It's all about how your policy defines things
Yeah,
because
yeah,
depending on how you're wording it, if you
yeah,
lose sight of a patient, that could be
yeah,
perceived as
yeah,
well.
yeah. That's
If
true.
they
More
go into an
likely that.
unsecured area, right? All right. So,
Yeah, yeah, right, right. And they're not
what your policy say
supervised.
is the word.
I think they'll spread the wealth and give you a little bit of both. Failure to
Y-
provide adequate supervision for the elopement that would have prevented the elopement.
I think of F689 right away.
Mm-hmm,
Accidents
mm-hmm.
and injury.
Yeah,
I
right,
think
right,
of F600 abuse right away. These are just
right.
top of my head
Exactly,
citations that I'm thinking about.
even if you've done everything you could as a facility and your staff, the Department of Health is being very liberal and giving all of this. They will give you the citation just to bring it to your attention, let you know the severity of the circumstances. And
Yeah.
more than likely, I think IJs are being handed out like candy right now.
Now, for the
I've
people
never
who may
seen too
not
many.
know, what is an IJ or immediate
Yeah,
jeopardy for the
yeah,
people who may
right,
not know?
right. Immediate jeopardy means that the facility, there's some egregious adverse event that has taken place that should not have happened, and that they will
Hmm.
come into your facility and basically determine if you're in compliance. If they find that there's one element of that particular policy is out of place, they can pretty
Hmm.
much prevent you from taking admissions until you get that particular issue resolved and corrected. And they will stay in your building until you do it. That's the other piece of
Listen,
that.
and,
And they
and
will
and for the
cite
people
you,
that
and then
don't,
they'll give you a civil money penalties depending on how many days it takes you to get that policy in line. Educating your
I,
staff, running drills. It's not just, oh, we're going to do it down the line. No, they
yeah,
want it done before they leave that building.
when you talk about an IJ, and as I mentioned, right, I got an IJ before, and that was my first one 3 months into the job, right? I had to do everything in my power to abate it. That's what it's called. You have to do an
Mm-hmm.
abatement plan.
Right.
So
Right.
you have
Right.
to think about how you're going to protect that current resident. In that event, that resident wasn't in the building when they came out, so element one was good. But how am I going to
Right.
prevent it from everybody else? So I had to
Right.
do, if I have to think, and I'm just going to rattle off the top of my head, elopement assessments for everyone, door audits, because obviously they left out
Mm-hmm.
the door,
Mm-hmm.
education and
Mm-hmm.
training, update my policies and procedure, update care plans, put people on the Wonder Guard who needed a Wonder Guard, put the books at the front door, have a
Right.
system in place to make sure the books are monitored, make sure security understand the books, make sure people are doing what they need to do if there is an elopement. So if for my administrators out there, you just have to be mindful. It's not a one-time training.
Mm-hmm.
F689 is real. IJs are real. Abuse,
Right.
neglect, 600 are real. But
Right.
let me tell you what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go in front of the board for my IJ.
Oh, did you?
Many people
Oh.
don't talk about it.
Oh,
I
wow.
tell you,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
took me. Them people
Yeah.
took me to the cleaners.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
I got taken to the board for this reason, not because I had an IJ, because I was only
Uh,
3 months in. So they said, "Look, we get you were 3 months in." The root cause of my investigation revealed, and I was a nurse, so I
mm-hmm.
was being loving to my nurses. The root cause of my investigation revealed that I had staff sleeping when the patient left the back door.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I termed them, but you know what I didn't do? Take a guess. Take a wild guess.
Mm.
What did I do? I know I see
Good
somebody who can
question.
comment in the comments. Take a
Oh,
guess
wow.
of what I did not do.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be a good. What did you do? I don't know.
What did I fail to do as an administrator, and why? And
That's
that,
a good one.
I love to see it in the comments,
Huh.
especially if you're on
That's a good
YouTube. You
one.
can comment.
Yeah, I would like to see the responses on this one myself. I'm trying to think.
Oh,
Hmm.
I did a thorough investigation. Oh, they applaud me. And once again, they did not. They said, "Look, Mr. Kirk, we're not going to give you
Right.
anything for your investigation. In fact, you're only there 3 months. There's nowhere that you can evaluate every single
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
policy in that time." But I'm gonna
To
tell you,
progressive
the
discipline.
nurses, the nurses were termed.
Okay, that
I
was.
failed to report. I failed to report them for
Oh,
neglect.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Okay. Okay. That's the other piece. When they walk in the door, they want to see you've already reported it before the state even gets there.
Well, no,
That's the
I
other piece.
reported it, but I didn't
Okay.
report the nurses.
The
So
nurses.
the nurse,
Oh,
they said
wow.
the nurses were
Okay.
neglectful for sleeping.
Okay. Okay. You didn't report to their board.
I didn't report the
Mhm,
nurses to their
mhm.
board, so they
Oh,
said we coming
wow.
after you because you're a mandated reporter. I
Oh,
said
wow.
what?
Okay. 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 That's a good one.
So for my
That's
administrators out there that's listening, you got nurses sleeping there, and there's an adverse effect and there's harm.
yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I love my nurses to death. I am a registered nurse. I am a class away from
Right.
my doctoral degree in nursing. I'm all
Right.
nursing, but I would
Right.
never not report. I'd rather report and the state say that there's not an issue than
Mm,
fail to report and then they come back and slap my hand. Now, in this
mm.
instant, they were very nice to me. They slapped my hand and said,
Uh,
"We don't want to see you in here anymore." So I don't have a record. I didn't get sanctioned. I didn't get fined. When I say
good.
they literally slapped my hand, they
Yeah.
literally was like, "Don't come back." And I said,
Yeah. Yeah.
"You won't see me again."
Right. Right. Lesson learned. Right.
I turned away. Is y'all gonna let me walk out like that? Fading into the darkness.
No free jewelry. No free
Uh,
handcuffs.
I'm glad they held on to
Yeah.
them. So you know,
Yeah.
I want to. I just want to emphasize to people that IJs are out there. We have to keep our patients safe. We don't know what happened. I can
Yeah.
only talk about my
Right.
experience. Laugh and joke.
Right.
The patient was safe. There was no harm to my
Yeah.
patient. She lived,
Oh,
came
good.
back, no lawsuits. I
Good.
mean, we're talking at this point eight
Right.
years ago. So things are
Right.
good. So how can they reach you as we bring this to a close? How can they reach you?
They can reach me by phone. Phone number is 216-385-0008. And I'm available to do any type of risk assessments of your facilities from a compliance standpoint. I know the OIG just released a new instructional guide with regards to how to enhance your compliance programs, and I'm available to help you out with that if need be.
And run those credentials again. I fixed them
I'm
on
a
the screen.
nurse.
Hopefully you see that.
I
Let me make
appreciate
it big
it.
because you.
I'm a registered nurse with my law degree, and fortunately, I've been able to utilize both in long-term care, and it's been very useful.
Yes.
So,
And you served as a chief compliance officer previously.
yes, yep, that's my most recent
Hey,
hat to put on my head was a chief compliance officer in long-term care and
you
government
know,
contractors as well.
hey, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate you being candid with me. To the audience out
Uh-huh.
there, they know me, but let me just reintroduce myself. My name is Demetrius, registered nurse, healthcare consultant with SMK Medical. My specialty is risk and compliance from an operational and clinical standpoint. So I come into your building, do evaluations, and my goal is to help you do three things: improve your census, meet your budget, and stay compliant. It's just that
Right.
simple. You want to follow me, you can follow me on LinkedIn at A Servant Leader. Hey, and also on all platforms at Your Healthcare Consultant. I appreciate everyone for coming out.
Thank you.